Hi, welcome to Faith and Culture Now. Today I'm joined by Shelby Griffith. Shelby, thank you so much for being here. And I'm really glad to have you with us today. We're going to talk about the issue of suicide and the issue of dealing with grief when you lose someone to suicide. This is one of the biggest epidemics in our culture right now. The suicide rate is currently the highest it has ever been in the country. In addition to it being such a big epidemic, when it comes to looking at gun deaths in America, 2/3 of gun-related deaths deal with suicide. And so because this is such a big issue, it's important for people to know how to deal with it and how to talk about it. And it's important to talk about because most people that deal with suicides don't even know the person that's committed suicide is struggling until it's too late.
True.
So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to you to let you share a little bit of your story with us.
Okay. So my father recently took his life 2 years ago, and he battled with depression for many, many years, and it was really hard to deal with that because to deal with the death because I mean amongst anyone that deals with any type of death, suicide is really, really complicated because you always end up asking the question why. And my dad was actually being seen by a psychiatrist and getting help, and was reaching out to his psychiatrist, which is not like my dad to reach out and ask for help. So it was actually a really tough situation because we were just blindsided. Anyone that's in that situation is blindsided. So leading up into it, looking back, my dad was dealing with a lot of problems with his mom and some family situations, and my dad had a really rough past, and my dad was just one of those people that was very strong, that was always like, you can get through anything, don't let your past scar you, don't let things keep you down. He was just very, very strong, and just always made sure we were okay, made sure everybody was okay, always looked out for everyone else, was so giving, so helpful to everyone. I think that's a lot why I am like I am between my mom and my dad. I'm just so giving to other people. And we always saw my dad just giving of everyone, but yet we knew he had his own issues and his own problems, with his family and everything. And then over the years, his mom got sick, and that's where a lot of his issues were. And he ended up taking care of his mom towards the end of her life, and he just really couldn't handle seeing her in that state, and it really wore on him. So he ended up getting himself help, which was the right thing to do, and because it put him into a major, major depression. And she ended up dying, and then leading up into his death, my dad was reaching out to his psychiatrist saying, I just don't really feel good, I don't feel right, I'm not doing very good. He had a transition at his job, and according to everybody at his work, like he was doing okay, but then they could tell he was a little bit just not okay either. But the day of it, my dad and mom were talking that morning for breakfast, and then he didn't show up to work, and so everybody started telling my mom like what's going on, what's wrong, and then he ended up hanging himself. And my mom came home for lunch. She saw that he wasn't anywhere at the table, so she went looking for him. She couldn't find him in the house, and she found him in the back in the shed, and it was already too late. And so it was one of those things where literally my husband came to one of my schools and told me he needed to talk to me immediately. And I knew something was wrong because my husband is a coach and he was actually at a track meet. So I knew something just wasn't right for my husband to be at the school to tell me he needed to talk to me. And it was like, okay, you know, what are you about to tell me? Is it something with your dad? Because your dad's sick right now. And then he was like, no, we need to call your mom. And I'm like, so my mom's about to tell me about your dad, is what I thought in my head. And then my mom said my dad was in an accident. And I'm thinking, oh, like a car accident. Is he okay? He okay? And then I could just hear the terror in my mom's voice. And it was just one of those things that you actually are like, it's not real. And I just screamed to the top of my lungs. And so that's kind of like how the nightmare unfolded. And I hope I didn't talk too long, but
no, it's fine.
You know.
Yeah. So obviously it's a very shocking situation, and it's something you weren't prepared for, as is usually the case. And even if you know leading up to it that, hey, this person is struggling a little bit, especially if you know they're reaching out and trying to get help, it becomes, I think, even more of a surprise when things don't progress the way you think they're progressing. And so after that happened, what are some ways that you dealt with the loss?
Well, so of course, since it was very much as a shock to everyone, it was chaos completely because I needed to take care of my mom. That was pretty much my focus. And so I looked at ways to help my mom. She was in Odessa, I was here, so it was like, you know, far away kind of thing. I stayed there for a little bit, took a little bit of time off work, and then when I came back here, I had to finish out the school year, and I don't even know how I was able to do that because, again, it's like this complicated loss. You're still trying to find out why did he do that? What was going on? What do we not do? What do we, how do we fall down? You know, where do we not support him? What could we have done differently? And so you're just in a loss completely. And I started actually even questioning like my faith, like, God, like, you left us, like, do you love us? Do you not love us? It was a really, really difficult time. It was really, really dark, honestly. I've never been so dark in my life, because you just really feel lost. You're so lost because you don't know what to do. And so I knew from my job, and when it's yourself, you don't know what to do. But like every day I lead people to, you know, resources. And so I just knew, okay, you've got to go to these resources yourself. And so there's these Christian groups that meet. And so I said, I got to go. And so it was like the first Wednesday that they met, and I went and I showed up, and I was so fragile. And they sat in a circle and they introduced themselves, and I could hardly even talk. And I said, I just recently lost my dad, like just, I think it was maybe 3 weeks at that time. And I mean, she said, that's fine if you can't talk, like you don't have to talk, you can just sit here and listen in the support group. And if I hadn't ever went into that support group, I don't know that I could have even made it through the rest of the school year, to be honest with you. Because being in a room with people that completely get what you're going through and having like the same kind of core value as you was so good for me to reconnect, because I was losing like my faith. I was losing, my direction. I was losing so many avenues. I was so lost and everything. And so that was something that I would suggest to someone, is finding like a support group or a counselor or something like that. Those grief groups are not really where I would suggest someone to go, because a grief group has all different kinds of losses in it, but a suicide group has it's a very
Yeah.
just, zoned in. It's only specific for people
Sure.
that have lost
You know,
someone.
everybody
to suicide.
experiences grief in their own way. It's never right to say to someone, I know how you feel.
Right.
Because you can't know how someone else feels, because everybody, even if they go through a similar situation, experiences their own emotional, if you will, their emotional journey through that differently. And so having people in a group that's similar, at least there's some kind of special connection there that you might not get in a larger setting. But going to any setting is better than not talking to anybody.
Right.
And counseling is good for healthy people. Counseling is good for people that are hurting. And so the opportunity to go and to share with others and to listen to others, there's just something about the solidarity of being with others that are walking through the same process. And again, everybody in the group's going to experience things a little bit differently.
Exactly.
But they're all there with a similar purpose in mind, and just knowing I'm not alone in this, I'm not by myself dealing with this, is a big help for a lot of people. So, and you mentioned, you were in a dark place. You mentioned being a little bit angry at God, or feeling like God may have abandoned you, or even perhaps wondering, is God really there? And that's all very common. That's very human, if you will. I mean, those are the kinds of thoughts that people tend to have when they lose someone.
Right.
And it's important in situations of great loss to either choose to trust God or to choose not to. And the choice to trust Him may be a difficult choice to make. For many people it is. But if you say, I'm going to trust Him, and part of that trust is going to another group where I can hear with stories from other people in the same situation, those kind of things sort of help you draw back in to where you can begin to see the light, and wanting to know, why did this happen? Sometimes we never know why.
Right.
But sometimes we do. But more often than not, we don't get all the answers.
Right.
Even if we get some of the answers, we can figure out what led to this perhaps, but we can't always know, why it had to happen that way.
Right.
And so knowing that it's important to trust God even when you don't have all the answers, because He sees a bigger picture than we can even comprehend, is an important step in learning that it's okay to trust God even when the world around us doesn't make sense, and we feel like we're lost, and we feel like we're out on a boat in the middle of the ocean with no sight of land. So
Exactly. And also, when I said it's a complicated grief, the reason why I was like, I need to get to that suicide support group is because with it being complicated, I went through a time that I was mad at God, but I was also mad at my dad. And then I was like, I shouldn't be mad at my dad. For him to do something like that, he was mad at himself, he was just in that much pain. Not that he was mad at himself.
Yeah.
He was in that much pain, and hurting that much. And so, it's just complicated. You go back and forth, and you're just
Sure.
mixed emotions, and you just that support of those other people in the group really understand, because they're feeling that exact same kind of way about their loved one. And they're like, yes, I've been mad at my loved one too, but if it's someone, if it's a different kind of grief, that you have, they died because of a car accident. They died because of cancer. They died because they got, pneumonia, and there's a final reason, and you can kind of, wrap your head around it. Yes, it's still sad and it's heartbreaking. And I've lost many family members like that. And so I know how that exactly feels. And it's still very sad grief. But at the end of the day, you can wrap your head around the reason why. But the suicide is still left. I don't know. I really don't know why he finally did that. And so you still are kind of struggling with that,
Sure.
anger. And
a lot of times we think to ourselves, okay, this person made this choice for a reason, but we don't stop and think, were they even in control of their emotions at
Right.
the time? Maybe they were thinking, this is what I need to do, but they were they were in so much pain,
Right.
or so much emotional turmoil, they weren't even really fully cognizantly aware of what they were doing in the
Right.
first place. If you were to say give some advice to people who have lost someone as a result of suicide, what are maybe 2 or 3 things you would say to them?
Well, for sure, talk about it, because the more you just keep things inside, I mean, it's going to eat you up. It's going to put you into a situation that is not going to be healthy for you, and talk to someone about it. Sometimes people are scared to talk because they feel like if they talk about suicide, that it's actually going to make people possibly feel suicidal or whatever, and that's actually contradictory, very contradictory. So talk about it, share things with people. A lot of times people are scared to discuss that subject. So if someone doesn't want to discuss that subject with them, then find someone that will, like a counselor, get in a support group. There's support groups all over the place. There's, people that are there to reach out. There's nonprofits that do counseling for free, trauma counseling. There's, if it's really, really affecting you, there's also just, the regular, counseling, like grief counseling and things like that. But I would definitely suggest with a difficult subject, really, to this, like, precise, to look at something more specific as far as trauma counseling and or some sort of, suicide support group, and really just sharing your subjects. I also, a friend of mine had said, maybe you should join like the walk, the Walk for Darkness. And so I thought about it for a while, and then I did. And I made a team for my dad. And, it's like sharing his memories and things like that. It was support for suicide awareness. And I feel like that was a really good thing.
Yeah.
A lot of mental health agencies were there. They're raising funds so that they can go into schools and hospitals and workplaces and, do more info commercials and more things on social media to really get the awareness out there, because it is such a growing crisis in our society, unfortunately. And so I did that, and that really helped, like, me, like, as a person, just feel better about not honoring my dad's suicide, but honoring my dad as a person, and that yes, he had depression, and that he was sick just like someone that had any other kind of health problem. And so it's just like me going to a cancer walk or Alzheimer's walk, and so it was really actually very therapeutic to me in the end. So I would recommend maybe something like that.
Yeah, certainly. Those groups that are trying to raise awareness, a lot of people out there think suicide's a big deal, but it doesn't affect me. The thing is almost anybody you look at knows somebody who has dealt with suicidal issues. And when it comes down to honoring your dad's life, every person is a valuable human being. Every person has intrinsic value because they're created in the image of God. And because all people are created in God's image, God values and cares for every single life. And, when people commit suicide, it doesn't negate their value. It doesn't detract from who they are, created in God's image. And as a result of that, doing something like the Walk for Darkness, where you're honoring someone's life and trying to raise awareness to help keep the same thing from happening to somebody else, it's a very commendable thing.
Yeah.
So, what are any bits of advice you might have to give to, say, someone who might be currently struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts?
Again, just really, really talking and speaking. It's very easy to just lay in bed and forget about the world. I've been there, done that, especially after my dad's death, after the school year, the summer hit. I just wanted to lay in the bed and stay in the bed. And it's very, very easy to just forget about, society and the world, because you are in that depression state. And so very much you need to get out, talk to people, express your concern. Hey, this is how I'm feeling. I just don't feel good about myself, or I'm not doing okay today, or I'm just not feeling right, or I'm really hurting, or that really bothered me, or if you don't have someone to reach out to, you don't have family, you don't have friends, find a church group, find someone somewhere, because there is help. I can't express that enough to people. A lot of times people will tell me, well, I can't find help, but yet there is help for people. There's suicide support hotlines. I made a call to the hotline many of times because it was in the middle of the night and I didn't know who else to call. And so those hotlines will just listen and they understand. And I'm like, I really miss my dad. This is what's going on. And they just listen. And those people are trained professionals to help you and guide you. And they will even find you a counselor or support group. And they'll, direct you into that channel and avenue if you don't have those resources or those answers. And so I always tell people that's a really good avenue, those hotlines or the directory, the 211. That's an easy number to remember. They'll always have resources for you as well.
If you're dealing with these issues, it's great to talk to people. The people you talk to, especially if they're friends and family, they don't need to have all the answers for you. They just need to listen to you. And if you know someone who's dealing with these kinds of thoughts, you don't have to come up with all the answers for them. It's more important just to be there for them, to support them, to encourage them, and to listen to them. Their struggle is real. A lot of times the struggle is something they can't overcome on their own. And so to think to themselves, just think to yourself, well, they just need to get over it. That's just not always possible. It's not logical for them to be able to do that in their own power. And so just listening to them and then trying to help get them somewhere that is trained to better provide them help is a really good thing. When it comes down to people who are continually struggling with these thoughts, it's good to even look towards, maybe might be some medication that you can take that people can, typically psychologists can prescribe that would allow you to help get over some of your slumps. And those options are out there, but they're not there to replace friends and family, but they are there in addition to support friends and family and to help you in ways where your brain just can't do what it needs to do on its own. And so don't feel ashamed to need help. Don't be ashamed to ask for help, because the reason people want to help you is because people care about you. And whether it's family, friends, or even a counselor who cares, there is definitely an opportunity for people to help you if you just speak out and talk and begin to look for those resources. So,
very true.
Shelby, thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been very good. I hope that our prayer is that your story will help encourage others and help them to make some choices that push towards healing and push away from hurting, and sort of like with the run you're doing, help people go from the darkness to the light. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks.